Hello and welcome to Finger Thinking. Today we have part 3 of the Princess 300 epic saga. Oh my goodness, I had no idea when I got this machine that it was going to be so labor intensive and effort intensive to get it up and running. So I've discovered so many issues with this machine. Some of them, for example, which have been straightforward, like getting the keys working again. But some of them were completely new to me, like fixing the carriage return lever. In this video, we address a bunch of other stuff that I haven't had to fix before, but we get through it. And so that we fix the margins because if you remember in previous videos, the margins didn't stop. So they would just keep traveling, the carriage would just keep traveling well past where you'd set the margin. So we fixed that. The bell wasn't dinging, so we fixed that. The carriage shift was fouling, so it was kind of making this grinding noise every time you press the carriage shift button. And to do that, we also removed the carriage. So if anyone wants to know how you take the carriage off a Princess 300, stay tuned. So we do cover that quite comprehensively in this video. Now, it is a long video. I'm very aware of that. I have bookmarked it to the best of my ability just to give you an opportunity to skip to the troubleshooting that you want to see if you're here for a specific reason. But if you're here because you just like nerding out on typewriters and you want to watch the whole thing, that's awesome too. So I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I hope you get some value out of this video, and yeah, I'll see you in a moment. Improvements. Now, with the margins, so we can see that these little tabs here, this one here, and this one over here, this is what sits underneath those margin sliders, right? So you push that down, move it along, and these are supposed to catch on this. Now this, and so what we weren't getting is, if we to kind of move the carriage along, what should happen with the margin is that it catches on here, but this little plate keeps slipping backwards. So when that plate's out of the way, then the carriage will continue straight past that margin tab. Okay, so I've had to move to a different camera for this bit. But at the moment we're looking at the back of the machine, and the bit I want to fix is this little tab here, because that's what's missing on the margin stop, right? So this is the margin stop at one end, the margin stop at the other. What should happen is that tab should be further in and the margin stop should catch on it. And that's how it would work. It's leaning too far back. What I think it is it's just this little screw here needs to be loosened, and then I need to push it up. So I'm going to try that, and I can guarantee I'm going to bump the camera, so sorry in advance. So getting that screwdriver in there isn't going to fit too well. So if I put, because this is a carriage shift, if I put the shift lock on, then it means that I can get access to this screw better. Okay, so there's no kind of, it's a bit of an art how far I want to put that in. Catches, yes, catches. Excellent, excellent. So I will tighten that up a little bit more. And so there we go. So that was a really easy fix. Now I want to look at the bell. So what we need is we need this kind of little mechanism here to spring forward and hit the bell. So what happens is, hopefully we can see it, we're watching for this tab to come along and pull back this lever. Okay, so that's what should happen as that mechanism comes back, it should spring down far enough that it dings the bell. At the moment, it's not doing that. It's springing up, but it's not bouncing back. So it appears to be kind of intact in that we can see the spring in here. And there's nothing else missing on there. It's just maybe this also needs a bit of a flush and an oil. So I will play with that, probably off camera because the camera's in my way at the moment. And then once I fix it, I will come back and explain what I've done. Okay, because I want to get in and look at this a little bit more and figure out why this tab isn't catching on this mechanism enough to pull all the way back here, I'm going to take this plate off. It's just 2 screws, and hopefully that will give me some better access. Okay, well, I just decided to take this plate off from here. It was just 2 screws, and of course those screws don't just hold this plate on. I have discovered that they hold the whole margin mechanism in. So anyway, whilst we've got it off, let's have a look. So it's just a bar with a bunch of teeth that then you push this down. So this is spring loaded, push it down, move it along. And that's why you always kind of, when you do move your margin on any machine, you do need to kind of feel around and make sure you've seated it in a tooth. So same at the other end. But yeah, and then I've got the 2. I need to make sure when I put this back on that I have the margin stops in the right spot that just sit between the plate and the back of the machine. Okay, so taking the plate back has given me a lot more visibility, but it's also pulled out the little margin stops that were attached up here. So it might not have aided my situation as much as I'd hoped. Because sure, I can get in and I can look at this little lever here, but I can't look at it in the context of being pushed back by a margin stop. So anyway, what I might do a little bit, I might kind of see if I can just clean this up a little bit, because it works, it travels the whole way, it just doesn't flick with the velocity that it needs to flick. And so that's what I need to solve. Okay, now that I've taken this back plate off and I don't have the margin stops anymore, I have to be quite careful about the carriage not going too far. So we can see that without any margin stops at all, this part of the mechanism is fully exposed. So I have a wall just behind me here, and so where the typewriter is sitting is actually stopping the carriage from going any further. And I'm just going to try and lube it up. So I'm going to do a little bit of an alcohol flush just on the pivot points. Whoops-a daisy. Sorry. Blast that out. Just put a little bit here. Now I'm just going to sit here and flick it back a few times to see if I can just loosen it up. And it's still not good. If I give it a sharp flick, it works, but if I just do it gently and it's my thumb slides off that top little kind of hook bit, then it's just doesn't have the momentum to get all the way there. So if I pull it back to this plate here, then yep, heaps of momentum. If I don't, there just isn't enough energy in the spring mechanism. Oh, okay, radio. So there is a spring down in here as well, right? So just in here under this plate is a spring. So as I'm pulling this back, that spring is pushing down. So that might be a bit old. I'll stick a bit of alcohol in there as well. The alcohol just dissolves some of the gunk and the grime, right? So that's all I'm doing. Just give it a little bit more alcohol, and then it's a spring, so I'm not going to oil the spring. Okay, so just kind of degreasing it, for want of a better word, that spring, whoops, I seem to be getting a little bit more. I can get the bell to ring without getting this all the way back to that plate. So I only need half the treble. All right, I'm just going to blow that out. Oops, sorry, there isn't, and I don't have any other solution other than, like the keys, just using them until it starts, and that's okay. That has loosened up a lot, so I'm going to put this back together without the carriage falling off, and then hopefully we'll have a spring that works. When we're putting this back together, if you want to know the order, so we can tell by there's a little bit of discoloration around here and here. So this goes on the outside, and then these bars, the pointy bits, point towards me when I'm looking at the back of it. So the pointy bits point out, but these holes here and here, these are threaded, and this hole here is not threaded. So therefore, by default, this bit has to go on the inside. When you've got the screw on this backing plate, there is only one way that this bit will go on. So you can't mess that up because it just doesn't fit if I try and put it around the other way. But I am going to wipe that down. I'm not going to line up this piece just yet because I'm pretty sure the way it swings, I'll have a little bit of movement. I'll be able to align this later. All right. Okay, I appear to have caught the hole on that side. So let's do the same thing over here. Excellent. I just need this to move along. There we go. Okay, so that works. So we've got that back where it should be. Now we just need to try and get this bell to work. Hey! We just needed to loosen that up, right? So excellent. Oh, so happy about that. All right. Okay, so I think we're almost ready to type. One thing I have noticed is the carriage shift is really, it's really heavy compared to my other machine, which is one, really light, two, that the red machine's much quieter. If we listen, we can kind of hear it's kind of like a almost grinding noise. It's catching on something. And so now I need to have a look at what that might be. Okay, so I have this persistent issue where if I push the shift key up, this carriage is just binding on something. I'm not quite sure what it is. So, well, I didn't want to do this, but curiosity has got the better of me. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the carriage off. It looks pretty straightforward. So before I give it a go, I just want to show what I think I have to do. Now, okay, so the drawstring, so this is the spring here. So the drawstring goes down here it goes all the way under the carriage. It goes down around this pulley here, then it comes back down under and, whoops, ends up right here. And what I was trying to do was not have the carriage run off the end of the carriage rails without planning on that happening. Because I've taken this back plate off and the margin stops aren't there, I continually forget that I need to hold on to it. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and it just goes so far that it seems it's going to be pretty straightforward. Whoops, a daisy. So let's focus the camera back over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this bit off. I'm going to try and hook it around. I'm not quite sure what to hook it around. I haven't done this before. This is all kind of like live on camera. And then, so I've just got this kind of little old plastic card. I've cut a hole in it. I've cut a slit in it. I've got a little hole here. And what I'm going to do is just hook the drawstring, the end of the drawstring into this. And hopefully that will stop it just disappearing completely. But worst that can happen is that, because I don't want this spring, I don't want to lose tension in the spring. So we'll find out. Let's see how we go. I might just zoom that out a little bit. Okay, so I've pulled this out. I'm just going to slip this down. I'm glad I did that because I lost grip of it on with the tweezers, but I have been able to catch it on this card. And now I just need to, let's move this out a little bit further, just be really careful as because there is now, I don't know how well, so the little hole here, I need to just take this string out of this hole and we'll see how we go. All right, so now we don't have tension on the carriage, then that, and I can just take that right off the end. Bang. All right, so we've got that. How I keep this so it doesn't let go, I've got no idea. I've just set it down in here, and I'm going to have to hope for the best. But yeah, all right, so that has just come off. I'm fully zoomed out. That's just come off in one piece. One. I now have the carriage. So that came off so easily. It did come off with 2 ball bearing races. So these have just like a little, let's zoom this in. So there are little cogs on these. So there's 2 ball bearings on either side. And yeah, so this is what the carriage actually sits on to take it back and forth along the carriage rails. They appear to be in relatively good condition. Probably a little bit of gunk in there that I can clean out. So I just tap that out already. So that, I don't think they're gonna, whoops, sorry, I don't think they're gonna be the source of any problem. But yeah, now I just need to have a look at the rest of this machine. I'll take it down off this platform here and see what I can see, and see if I can figure out why the carriage was fouling on something back here. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so one of the things I think I'll do is I think I'm actually going to take these plastic guides off here just to give me more visibility when I'm looking at the back. I'm looking from the back, looking at the carriage tracks. So one of the things that you want to do is just when taking these out, make sure you've got a bit of pressure behind it and you seat the screwdriver well, because these are dark screws and you don't want to, because they're so narrow, you'll probably have to use a screwdriver which is smaller than the actual width of the slot, and you don't want it to slip and then burr the top of the screw, because then it just looks poor. I realise this is amateur hour because I am an amateur enthusiast, but I don't necessarily want it to look like amateur hour at the end. Okay, so that's good. That just gives us a little bit more visibility here. Now, I'm hoping I remember to just check back periodically about, actually, that just sits around that pulley. So one of the things I might do, just to release some tension, bugger, and the string slipped off. So not really what I wanted to happen. So what's happened is, as I've got the string all, and it's just slipped off the pulley, the spring, and it's now sitting under there. Bugger, which means my tension's going to be wrong, which means I'm just going to have to try and remember what tension I had by feel, what it was and what's sufficient when I put it back together. That is a nuisance, and this is why I didn't want to take the carriage off. But now that that's messed up, I don't have to worry about losing tension on the string. Bugger. All right. I jinxed myself when I said amateur hour earlier, because that's exactly what it is. All right, look, so when I took these races out, so one of the things I noticed is this little ball bearing came out of here. So this ball bearing belongs in there. So one of the things I'll need to do when I give that just like a little once over, might scratch some rust out. I just need to make sure that ball bearing goes back in this hole. All right. But we'll do that in a minute. The moment, now I've got this back off, I just want to get in and give it a bit of a clean. And then, yeah, now the carriage is off. It doesn't, so, all right, well that's good to know. So can you hear that grinding? So that's not supposed to happen. So something's fouling on something that it shouldn't do, and now I have that carriage off, I have a much better chance of being able to find it. Okay, so I've found the bit that fouls, and what's happening is this kind of lever that dings the bell here. We spent a lot of time looking at this earlier to clean it up. This lever fouls on this bar that goes along here. So if I push that down, I don't know, hopefully the camera should pick that up. You'll see, I need to get this on a stand so I can have my other hand free. But I'll hit this with an arrow in post. But just watch in here, you can see this fouls. So that's not supposed to foul on this bar, and I have no idea why it would be fouling on that bar, because I don't see how that could be like bent in any way, shape or form. And if I do that again, so it's a weird thing, so I need to have a bit of a look at that. I'm going to sit here and play with it, and then when I figure it out, I'll come back. Okay, so I had a bit of a look at what this bar even is, because I wasn't sure. And what it is it's the tab mechanism, right? So this button up here, which is the set and clear tab button, if I'm pushing that up, you can see that this mechanism along here and this bar right at the back, that's the tab clear mechanism. So it goes, if I'm plussing, it goes one way, if I'm minusing, it goes the other. So that's all related. I don't for the life of me know how it would get bent, but that is indeed, oh good gracious, there's cacophony of birds outside, sorry about that, but that is indeed what appears to be the problem. So I am just going to try and bend that back in as best I can. Now, just one of the things to be aware of, like the obvious way to, the obvious way to do this would be kind of to get a screwdriver in here and try and bend it down. And naturally, you'd want a lever off this bar here that goes all the way along. Don't do that. You'll just end up creating other issues. So when I figure out what I'm going to do, I will come back and show you. Okay, so what I've done is I have these little, they're just jewelry pliers. They're really small pliers that have quite a fine nose on them. And all I've done is, so using this little lever to push the carriage down, it's just this little lever on the side, push the carriage down, just get my tweezers in there, pliers in there. And this back plate's quite sturdy, so I'm not worried about using that for leverage. And then I'll just grip the little kind of tab lever, and I'm just pulling it back a little bit. And put it there, and then just back just a little bit, and there we go. So we don't have that grinding anymore, which is fabulous. And if we zoom out again, then what I have is that if I use the tab button, so yeah, this is just off screen, but still, we can still see that bar, that linkage still works. So it's back a little bit, so it's going to flex out. So I might have to do this a couple of times, and then just to make sure that I've got it far enough. Certainly way better than it was. And now let's see if we can get the carriage back on without too much grief. All right, so with this ball bearing, hopefully so if I zoom in, we have this little kind of plate that's at right angles to the long plate, and hopefully it's just a case of angling this a little bit and pushing the ball bearing back in. And that's exactly what it is, right? So I've just pushed that ball bearing back in there. So that's all good. We just quickly have a look at the carriage. There's not really anything to see here. It's pretty straightforward. We can see all of the little kind of tab lugs down the bottom here. And so we'll play with the tabs when it's all back together. We see it working. We have, so these little rails on the carriage, this is what our ball bearings and our little sprocket wheels go into along there. Otherwise, and then that bar here, this is what the teeth of the escapement mechanism goes into. Okay, so these, when we return the carriage bar, this slides along here, but as we're kind of just typing, each incremental spacing, each of those teeth line up with the teeth on the escapement gear here. So it's actually pretty simple, and it must be just how easily that came off. Yeah, there are a lot of typewriters where the carriage doesn't come off that easily. So well, first of all, let's unwind this spring and then put it all back together. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. The band, this is basically just fishing wire in case anyone's wondering. I'll just zoom in on that. It's just fishing wire. I don't fish, so I can't tell you what gauge, but some drawbands are kind of braided. They're like a rope or a string. This is just nylon fishing wire. Now that feels like appropriate tension. You kind of have to do this. This wasn't so hard that I thought it was going to break, but it certainly, there's enough tension on that to willingly want to pull back to the spring. So this is where I want to seat. How did I have that before? I have that there. Okay, so now it's time to put it back together. I just had a go without hooking the drawband string back up. And so these races, we've got with the sprocket on the side. Now the sprocket goes on the outside. So I did for both the top and the bottom ones. Now I did actually go and have a look at the video to see how they came off because I hadn't been paying that much attention. So now with them, there's two ways. So there's kind of right way up, then there's upside down, if you can see that. So this one with the sprocket sitting on top of like the little rivet bit, so sitting on top of this cross plate, that's the way that they go up, because if you put them in upside down, they just don't want to run along here as nicely. So based on that, that's a lot smoother. So that's the way I'll be putting them both up, both in. So that one's the same. I've got the sprocket just so it's right side up. And that goes into, it just fits really nicely, and you can see it on this top one here. You can see that when that's in place, that actually fits very nicely into this rail. So in fact, it fits kind of flush into the rail. So the trick is to try and get them both in. And then, so what I did is I had them, because I just had a go at this. So if I have both the races just extend a little bit beyond the end of the rail, and then I get my carriage. Good gracious. My cat and my dog are chasing each other in circles. So get the carriage. The carriage can only go on in one way. So the carriage return lever has to be on the left-hand side of the machine. So we have the two little rails at the bottom, and I have to line those up with, if I just kind of pull the top one out. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this little race so it goes into the wheel. So I have to have that aligned on both sides as I put this on. So by sitting these just outside where these rails end, and this is absolutely how you hold your tongue, and it might be fiddly because you've got to get the middle of the plate that holds the ball bearings in the middle of the rails on the carriage. So now it is flexible for a reason, and that's to help you with this part, I'm sure. And then when you think you've done that, I think I have. There we go. The carriage goes in, and then it automatically engages with the escapement mechanism. And yeah, so that, without wanting to take it all the way off by accident, seems to be great. Okay, so I've put the carriage back on and I've put this back plate back on, but it's just not in the right spot. This is a little bit wobbly at one end, so that wobbles far too much, so I don't have the races in the right spot. And when I try and get it back to the other end, that's a little bit better, but yeah, so it's too flimsy. I was kind of hoping that with this back plate on, with the little lugs, it would stop it from falling off by accident, and which is exactly what it does. I have to take this back plate off again so that I can remove it and fix up the races. So that's a bit of a nuisance, but when I figure out exactly where the races should start and go, I'll let you know. Okay, so I've had another few goes at getting the right placement for the ball bearing cage. I need to correct myself. I've been calling it a race. It's not the race, it's the cage. And I think I've got it, because I've also propped it up on this because it was a lot easier for visibility to have it closer to eye level. So the carriage, that's not the carriage wobbling, that's just my uneven stand. So the carriage doesn't wobble in the middle. If I get it right towards the end of where it would be sitting, there's no floppiness there. And if we go back the other way, there's no floppiness there. So this means that the ball bearing cages are in the right spot, but I didn't film myself doing it. And there's going to be someone who will do this one day and go, oh, but I want to know where the cages go. So basically what you're trying to achieve, because this is not going to be a precision, it's going to be more of an art than a science, but what you're trying to achieve is that having the ball bearing cages, they can't ever leave these rails, right? So you don't want them ever protruding past these rails. So it means that when you've got the carriage at both kind of extremes, we need to see, can I see the ball bearing cages in here? And I can't. So this is basically maybe a little bit further. So it's basically about as far as it's going to get. And it's still, the carriage isn't floppy, which is great. And I can't see the ball bearing races. So if I move the carriage to the other side, races, cages. If I move it basically as far down here as I get, still not floppy, and I still can't see where the cages are sitting. Which means, so when I did that, and I'll take this off just to show everyone on YouTube where it needs to be. So when I take this off, when I put it back on, I was trying to put it on with the cages sitting into the carriage rails. I can't do that. they need to be actually sitting onto the kind of frame rails. So, and they were sitting partly protruding, but hopefully, because I didn't get this too well on the video last time, but if I do this slowly, so I get to, so I'm at a point now, I still can't see the ball bearing cages yet. So basically, if I do this really slowly, because I know this comes off, it's only about here when I have this plate sitting over this, I think it's part of the tab mechanism, that I can start to see down here, and the camera probably won't get it, only just starting to see the beginning of the ball bearing cage. And I have the cages lined up at the same place on either side. So as I start to take it off, so yeah, that's where it is. So if I look at this carefully, so, and this is starting to drag a little bit as it gets looser, this cage on the other side, the cage on the other side. So I take this off, and so I've still got the cages sitting in the base frame rails. Now where I had these before I put it back together last time, I had it with, so the little sprocket wheels, they go, they're pointing up. They're also on the left side of the typewriter, but the right side as I'm looking at it from the back. And I had them sitting just protruding out just a little bit, because what I want to happen is that as soon as the carriage starts to hit this base rail, I need it to engage. I need these sprockets to start engaging immediately. And what was happening when I was having these kind of sit further in is that the sprocket wasn't engaging with the carriage rails until the carriage was too far advanced, and so that's why I was getting that floppiness at either side. So that's what I'm going to try and achieve on camera. Let's see how it goes. So I have them both sitting here in place. I'll zoom in a little bit, just so you can see where, and of course this is going to focus on my fingers, not the bloody races. So I want this little sprocket sitting just outside this rail, and that one's just slipped. But yeah, so I want that on both sides. So I'm going to zoom back out and see if I can maintain that about right as I put the carriage back on. So the other thing that I'll have to do is, so these rails on the carriage, so it's a bit of a V shape. So what I need is this little plate that's holding the ball bearing in. I need that. I need, come on, let's focus over here. I need this little plate here to be, this horizontal plate to line up with the middle of the rail. So again, it's how you hold your tongue, and it might take you a few goes, but it's pretty straightforward. And then it should just, and this is going to move around, I'll just chop it up with a dirty cotton bud. But yeah, so that went on pretty easily, and it engaged with the escapement mechanism really easily. So if I go back here, so if we go to about the end of where that needs, so that's steady. We go right back to kind of the other end, and that's steady. So, oh good, I got it in one take for the camera. that's excellent. And and I can't see the cage is extending here, and nor can I see the cage is extending here. So I'm really happy with that, because this whole machine has taken so long. So I'm now in a situation where I can just reattach this drawstring. So it's still around the pulley here. I haven't lost it by accident this time. And I'll just do that now. So I want that needs to sit over in behind there, sit down at the bottom. And I just want to take that out of my little jerry-rigged holder. And the end just back into the slot, and so great. So now the carriage string's back on, and I just need to put this base plate back on, or back plate back on, so that I don't I don't accidentally go too far. So that will be the next thing I'll do. I've already shown how to do this, so I'll probably do that off camera, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so we've got the back plate back on. If we go to one side, no floppy carriage. If we go to the other side, no floppy carriage. If we just try, oh no. Okay, so what we have here, see how that's not pulling very far? So what that means is I really don't have enough tension on my drawband string, so that's okay. So easiest way to just do that. So I'm just going to put another revolution around, and now much better tension, right? So, oh, let's see. Oh, let's move the margin in and see if my bell still works. I haven't tried this, so great. Okay, so that is the end of the Princess 300 Epic Saga Part 3. Hopefully by now we should have fixed all of the issues. So in this video we've fixed the margins and the bell. We've got rid of that fouling carriage, and we also know how to take a carriage on and off one of these machines. I wish all machines were that easy to take the carriage off, but they're not. So this has been quite the apprenticeship of a typewriter, I think, because so much stuff was wrong with it. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you've learned. I hope this video is of value to you if you're playing with a Princess 300, or indeed anything else that seems to be similar. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it if you can do that. It really helps the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in part 4, where we'll stick some paper in it, stick a ribbon in it, and actually do a test of the typewriter in general. All right, thanks for watching and have a great day.